You're listening to your award-winning station,
Radio Glamorgan.
here for you, all day, every day.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Sporting Roundup. I am Ben Jones and I'm your host for today. I'm joined by my sports journalism course mate, Dylan James, to get all of you up to speed with this week's sporting action. However, before we get our teeth stuck into that, we're going to indulge ourselves in some good music. Up now, it's Have You Ever Seen the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival. You're listening to Radio Glamorgan from the heart of the Heath Hospital, and that was Have You Ever Seen the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Right, let's start then with this week's roundup with the rugby. Can you tell us the Wales team, please?
Right then, so starting in the front row, we've got Wyn Jones, Ken Owens and Thomas Francis. In the second row, it's Corey Hill and Alan Wyn-Jones. In the back row, we've got Josh Navidi, Justin Tipperick and Toby Falatau. At 9 and 10, the half-back pairing consists of Gareth Davis and Dan Biggar. On the wings, we've got Josh Adams and Louis Zammit. And then in the midfield, at 12 and 13, we've got George North and Jonathan Davis, with Liam Williams at fullback.
Dill, can you give me the lowdown on everything Wales and the Six Nations?
Yeah, no problem, Ben. Wales head into the penultimate game week of this year's tournament, with Pivac's side 3 out of 3 so far. On Saturday afternoon, Wales face up against Italy in Rome, looking to extend their winning run. So Pivac named his team to take on the Italians 2 days earlier than usual. I'm just going to give you a quick lowdown on selection. So Corey Hill comes in for Adam Beard in the second row, and Hill will be ecstatic to secure a starting place against Italy, having earned it scoring a try against England 2 weeks ago. Gareth Davis is chosen to replace an injured Kieran Hardy, with the latter having produced an incredible display in the victory over England. Jake Ball is named on the replacements bench and is in line to make his 50th cap. It's a funny one with Ball though, because this will be his last tournament for Wales. He's moving back to Australia to be closer to his family, and he actually has a newborn child he's yet to see as a result of the nationwide lockdowns. So it'd be nice for him to get a run out against Italy and get his 50th cap for Wales before he says his goodbyes. Cardiff Rugby scrum half Lloyd Williams comes in on the replacements bench with Hardy out. Despite producing a quite brilliant kicking performance against England, Callum Sheedy doesn't get his start, with Dan Biggar assuming his role at 10. So Ben, what are your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, it's a really strong team that Pivac has picked, really, isn't it? I mean, you just have to look at the backs, and it's filled with talent. I mean, you've got Liam Williams at fullback, you've got George North and Jonathan Davis in midfield at the centres, and I think George North played an absolutely brilliant role against England in that position. Obviously, Josh Adams had an incredible game as well on the wing, and Louis Zammit, who no one's going to get ahead of him at the minute. He's unreal. You mentioned about Dan Biggar's got the starting role. Personally, I agree with that. I think he is brilliant, no matter whether he's getting on or not. Callum Sheedy produced one of the best kicking performances I think we've all ever seen against England. He never looked like he was worried about missing a kick, and you knew that he was going to slot it wherever he was on the pitch. I am disappointed to see Hardy injured, because he produced a spectacular performance. You mentioned it, and I think he would have been a shoo-in for this game and definitely the France game. And then obviously going into the autumn and things like that. So he's going to be really disappointed, but Gareth Davis is a huge player as well. He's got it in him to put in a match-winning performance as well. And then obviously want to touch on Jared Evans, the Cardiff Rugby now fly half. He's been spectacular for them. Wales, they've got fly halves and scrum halves at the minute that they've too many to choose from, kind of thing. But this might have been the game to play Evans in, but he's going to go and get minutes for Cardiff now, isn't he?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's disappointing to see Jared Evans not involved in the squad again. Sheedy had a quite brilliant performance, as we've mentioned, against England. I was actually very surprised not to see him start against Italy, as I thought this would be the fixture that he could get that starting role, but Biggar's assumed that. I'm going to have to beg to differ with you on the whole fly half decision though, Ben. I reckon Sheedy should have started this fixture. It's absolutely ideal for him. But touching back on Jared Evans, I think he's been released back to Cardiff Rugby this week to play at club level. And I think it's quite disappointing for him, because I think it's 2 years in a row now he's been involved officially, but not involved physically, if you know what I mean. So, I think he'll be really disappointed. Hardy, on the other hand, it's gutting not to see him in the team. That little tap and go he did against England showed a lot of ingenuity and just rugby intelligence, really. It's little things like that that really do turn the tide of a game. Gareth Davis, however, is not a bad replacement for Kieran Hardy. So I think he'll work well with Bigger. The two halfbacks will combine well, and they've got loads of experience to show for it. So I think the Italy game, I think both of our predictions will be quite similar, aren't they? I can see Wales winning by quite some distance with the whole snowball effect of confidence given what's happened to them in the opening 3 games.
Yeah, I'm going to back you up. You said there. I think Wales are going to run out winners in this one. I'm glad there's not been many changes. I feel like Pivac wants to keep the team kind of close knit, keep it together. Obviously, judging on last year's Six Nations, it was a poor thing, and I think he doesn't want to make that same mistake this year, really. And he obviously hasn't. He's won 3 in a row. But I'm glad he's not made that many changes. Anyway, Dill, can you introduce our guest interviewee for this week's show, please?
Of course, Ben. So this week I chatted to a legend in sports journalism. It's Peter Jackson, a true idol in the world of rugby media with a rich and long history in the industry. In this clip, Peter gives his thoughts of Wales's electrifying start to this less than ordinary Six Nations tournament.
I'm delighted that he's had a few good breaks. I mean, you know, red card, dodgy decisions against England. I don't subscribe to the view that England lost that game because of those decisions. They lost that game because of their gross technical indiscipline. And I give Wales credit for, in the end, once they'd drawn level, I think most people would have thought, oh, going to lose this game now. And yet from that moment on, there was only one team that was going to lose it, and it wasn't Wales. So yes, I'm surprised. And I think anybody being honest would say they are surprised. I think we probably yet to see perhaps the game evolve the way they want it. I don't think you can attempt to downplay what Pivac's achieved by saying, oh, well, it's Gatland's team. Because if you look at it, he made big calls. He took off the halfbacks early in the second half at Murrayfield. He's given younger players, Hardy, Sheedy, Jim Botham, all these people, he's given them a shot. So the team is evolving. Although, I mean, the basis of it is as it has been over the years. I mean, look at the team that's playing this weekend. I think there's almost 1,000 caps in that team, which is, that's experience sky high, isn't it? So, yes, going to France to play for the Grand Slam, no disrespect to Italy, but when you lose 30 games on the trot and you lose by a distance, then can you imagine what kind of a steward's inquiry there would be if Wales don't win in Rome? It doesn't bear thinking about. People say, "Oh, you've been disrespectful to Italy." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm just being pragmatic. That you would expect Wales to get 5 points, and then it's a question of whether France can overhaul them. The bigger question is, can they win a Grand Slam in Paris? A another red card might help, but we shall see."
So Peter referenced how weak Italy are compared to other teams. There have been calls for Argentina to replace them. Do you think this is a good and valid call?
Yeah, Peter explained it very well in the interview that we've had with him there. And, I've grown up as a child, right, as a young Welsh rugby fan. My understanding of the game wasn't great then, but one of the things that's kind of ingrained into you is that when you come up against Italy, it's going to be easy and you're going to see a lot of tries, which isn't something you want to see from elite level sport. You don't go into games thinking, oh, this is easy, that it's over before it's even started. So I think it's not an absolutely out there shout to suggest that Italy may be removed from the tournament, or even a different nation brought in, like Argentina, for example. There have been reports in the week of them joining the Six Nations. I don't think that's totally out there. The Six Nations is a huge tournament. It's on the same level as competitions like the Premier League, the Champions League. Gains huge viewers in every fixture, and I think that the competition level needs to be huge. You can't have teams finishing rock bottom every single year. There has to be some kind of competition. I don't know what you think about it, Ben. Do you think Italy deserve it almost to be removed after having lost so many games on the trot?
Yeah, I'd say that there's an argument for it, isn't there? I think we've had this conversation before, and it's who you replace them with. Obviously, we spoke about relegation before, but would it ruin it if, say, England had a terrible year, or Wales, like last year, had an awful year and got relegated or something? Italy, I think we all know they aren't the greatest team, and like you said, Peter said in his interview, they lost 30 games on the trot in a row, isn't it? So it is almost going into the game knowing no matter how poor a side is, they're going to beat Italy. So a replacement would be great, but they can't be. Italy are kind of the best of a bad bunch, I think. You wouldn't really, if you replaced it, I think you'd still get similar. Argentina obviously would put up a fight. It's just whether they'd be up for playing in this. So what do you think Wayne Pivac has done differently this Six Nations campaign compared to last year's disappointing one?
Well, I think with anything, you've got the benefit of hindsight. I don't know if he's changed a huge amount, I think it's just the kind of settling in period is over now, and he's got to grips with what players are available, what young players he can bleed through and really use in these games. And I think the Autumn Nations Cup was a perfect example of someone using a tournament as a vessel to bleed through youth. You would have never seen these Sheedies, these Hardys, Zamet, getting that game time in a Six Nations tournament. They wouldn't have got it to that extent. Granted, it was an awful 2020 in Welsh rugby terms, but I think the Autumn Nations Cup does have a silver lining. It did bleed through those young players, and those players are performing now. Sheedy with that brilliant performance against England, especially his kicking game, and making that break as well, the interception. And as well Zamet, who's just absolutely lighting it up. Hardy with the tap and go. They're all performing, and I think without that grounding at the Autumn Nations Cup, you could argue that they wouldn't be ready for this tournament and Wales wouldn't be in the position they're in now. So to answer your question, I don't think he's changed a huge amount. I think he's finally reached a stage where he's comfortable and he's in a position where he's got players at his disposal and he doesn't have to bring in anyone new in. He's got his squad now. Would
you say he's kind of come to terms to international rugby now? And obviously last year was a big step up from kind of Scarlets, which is Pro 14 obviously, to now the kind of the top tier international stage. Do you reckon he's come to grips with it and he understands kind of the ins and outs now?
Well, yeah, I think as everyone knows, international and club rugby is inherently different. And the thing about Pivac, the thing that makes him unique, is the rugby that we saw the Scarlets play when they won the Pro 12s, it was, in 2017. It was never a case of, get set defensively and, we'll wait for a try. It was you score 2 tries and we'll score 3, 4 tries, which can't always be the best, but it is a swashbuckling, attacking rugby. And he'll have a setup despite the kind of blip at the start without having Sean Edwards there to shore up the defence. He's got a good coaching team behind him, so I think he's in a much better position than he was a year ago, and he's definitely got to grips with international rugby, and getting your team selection right is one of the main things.
So we'll move on to the team now, and I know you're a massive fan of Jonathan Davis as centre. What do you make of the partnership him and North are going to have in this game?
Well, they've already established that they can do the job against England, and I am a massive fan of Jonathan Davis. There were many eyebrows raised when Davis was selected to play at 12 with his normal position at 13 outside centre, but he did the job, and so did George North, who's in magnificent form at the moment, despite playing out of position because he's usually on the wing. But I think Zamet's kind of pushing him into that centre role at the moment, and when North is in form like that, no one can stop him. I think they'll have a really big part to play in this game. North just has that power, pace. He's the complete rugby player in many ways, and I think he'll combine well with Jonathan Davis, who's got that creativity and rugby brain to really break down defences.
Yeah, it's really unconventional, isn't it? But it worked against England, so why wouldn't it work against Italy? And then just to finish, what other aspect are you intrigued to see at the weekend?
I'm really excited to see some more of a Navidi, Tipuric and Faletau back row. Those three players are, in the form of their lives, especially Justin Tipuric, putting in, an absolute shift against England, and he's been putting in these 10 out of 10 performances the whole tournament. And I genuinely think those three players will be the Lions' back row. England have, an absolute vast array of talent in the back row. But I do think these three boys who are playing for Wales at the moment are putting in some quite brilliant performances. Navidi just returning from injury, but showing everyone, how much he's been missed. So I think the aspect I'm most looking forward to is definitely this back row, potentially scoring some tries from there too.
Yeah, and obviously you speak about Lions. Warren Gatlin's the coach, and he's worked with them, hasn't he? So they might be a bit in the pecking order ahead of the rest, really, won't they? But now we must move on to our second song. Here we have Walking on a Dream by Empire of the Sun. And that was Walking on a Dream by Empire of the Sun. You are listening to Radio Glamorgan from the heart of the Heath Hospital.
On air, all day, every day. Broadcasting from the largest hospital in Wales. We are Radio Glamorgan.
Now it's time to move on to our football roundup. The breaking news that has emerged in the last couple of days is that Rob Page is to assume the role of Wales head coach heading into the next round of the international fixtures, with Ryan Giggs' position still unclear amid an ongoing legal case. To the club sides now, and Swansea City missed their chance to go second after drawing 1-1 with Blackburn Rovers on Tuesday evening, so they will be raring to go to Luton Town at lunchtime on Saturday. Cardiff City will look to continue their strong start under Mick McCarthy as they welcome second-placed Watford on Saturday afternoon. And Newport County will look to make it 3 wins out of 3 in League Two as they travel to Morecambe.
You're listening to your award-winning station,
Radio Glamorgan.
here for you, all day, every day.
So as mentioned, Wales have announced that Rob Page is going to remain in charge of their team for their upcoming World Cup qualifying campaign against Belgium and Czech Republic, with a friendly game against Mexico in the middle. Page is continuing to deputise in the absence of Ryan Giggs, as the latter has had his bail extended to May the 1st. The FAW said in a statement, the Football Association of Wales and Ryan Giggs have mutually agreed that he will not be involved in the upcoming international camp. Page will be assisted by Albert Stuyvenberg, just as he was in November when the two took charge of the matches against the USA, the Republic of Ireland and Finland last year. So on to the Welsh sides now, and we'll begin with Swansea City. The Swans find themselves sitting third in the Championship table, but do have a game in hand over the two teams above them in Norwich and Watford. Swansea are tied with the Hornets on 66 points and could have gone into their second on their own if they'd have beaten Blackburn on Tuesday, instead having to settle for a point in a 1-1 draw. Andre Ayew scored the goal, with the Swans' only shot on target in the game. It's a trip east this weekend to face Luton Town, who sits 16th in the table. A 3-0 loss to top of the table Norwich last time out, but the Hatters were unbeaten in 3 games before that. Now to Cardiff City, who under Mick McCarthy look a completely different team. Unbeaten in 11 games, which includes 7 wins, see the Bluebirds sit 8th in the table and 4 points off the playoff spots. A scoreless draw last time out against Huddersfield is followed by a tough game as they host second place Watford this weekend. Harry Wilson is up for the Championship's Player of the Month, whilst his manager is also nominated for Manager of the Month. So to League Two and Newport County, the Exiles have tasted top of the league and looked like that was where they would remain for the stretch, but nothing is ever certain in football, right? So County find themselves 6th now, but not all hope is lost. They sit 5 points behind leaders Cheltenham Town as a whole host of clubs fight for the automatic and playoff spots. Their form, you ask? It's back-to-back wins for Newport, coming up against Colchester first and then Bradford City last weekend. This weekend it's Morecambe away, however, with the Shrimps sitting a place above them in the table, but have played a game more. How do you think the Welsh teams will fare this weekend, Dylan?
Well, Ben, last time the Swans played against Luton, they were 2-0 winners against 10 men. I can see something similar happening here, with Luton in 16th place, with 2 wins out of their last 5. I think the Swans will edge it. The Swans, however, are joint second, and with Brentford breathing down their necks in 3rd place, they'll be desperate to maintain good form with 3 out of their last 5. Well, Cardiff are absolutely flying at the minute under Mick McCarthy, and they're unbeaten in their last 5. But I think they'll meet their match against a side that are locked in with Swansea in second, and that's Watford. That one will be a good game, all things considered. Newport, on the other hand, will be looking to make it 3 out of 3 when they face Morecambe's side, who are just 2 points ahead of Mike Flynn's side. County will have all the more encouragement to really take it to Morecambe, as they have a game in hand, meaning they could very swiftly creep closer to the top 3, with just 4 points separating 2nd and 7th. Plenty to look forward to, man.
On air, all day, every day. Broadcasting from the largest hospital in Wales. We are Radio Glamorgan.
In other sports bar rugby and football, UFC bantamweight Welshman Jack Shaw will face Hunter Azure at Fight Night on April 10th. This will be Jack's third fight after winning his first 2. His last fight came back in July where he submitted American Aaron Phillips at Fight Island. Meanwhile, Jade Jones is aiming for her 3rd Olympic gold medal and says it will be her best yet. Speaking to the BBC, Jade explained that she is hoping to be in the best shape of her career, as she sets out to become the first woman in any sport to win 3 consecutive gold medals at the Olympic Games. Now it's time for our final song of the show. It's Millennium by Robbie Williams. Enjoy. That was Millennium by Robbie Williams, and we hope you enjoyed it. Unfortunately, that draws a close to this week's edition of the Sporting Roundup. Have a great weekend, and goodbye.